Duh.
Avenger?
Hardly know her. Hello everyone, I am your averager K-Swope, and today we are reviewing The Avengers, an absolute classic, and this review is going to work like this. We're going to talk about the good things about the movie, the bad things about the movie, have some notes at the end, and then of course we are going to be giving it a score on a scale from 1 to 10, 1 being similar to just stepping on a Lego brick, and 10 of course being in similar quality to Citizen Kane. So that being said, let's dive right in, talk about the good things about the Avengers movie. Guys, first things first, after my most recent rewatch, the score, okay, Alvin Silvestri, he cooks so well. I think there are superhero scores, okay, ones that really stand out. You associate, you just hear certain motifs and you're like, oh yeah, this is that music, okay? I think to myself, like Batman and the Danny Elfman score, I think of the John Williams Superman score, even like with Star Wars, okay, more John Williams. You just hear these themes, these scores, and you are like, yeah, takes me exactly to that. The Avengers score is the exact same thing, and I absolutely love it. It is so well done, and I just love the soundtrack of this film. Really great stuff. I also think this film, the setup, the whole Act 1 is just absolutely fantastic because, you know, we have the Tesseract, it kind of goes off, S.H.I.E.L.D. and everything, Loki takes the people, and especially there's that title card scene, right, where Coulson is like, what do we do? And then Nick Fury just kind of stands there, and then Avengers title card. It's pretty great, really good stuff. I think the villain being Loki in this, Loki I think is a really good villain. I like him a lot better in this than, say, Thor, for example, because in the Thor, I'm still really confused about what angle Loki's trying to play. It's really convoluted, I think. And so this is really straightforward. After the events of Thor, he's basically been cast out. He finds himself working with Thanos, and Thanos basically promises him Earth as long as he can bring back the Tesseract. And so that's kind of the idea. Also got to say, this film's got so much sizzle, and one of the biggest pieces of sizzle in this film is, of course, Stark Tower, which is an absolute beauty. I love Stark Tower so much. I love when it becomes Avengers Tower in later films. I think that is just really cool. And it, in the Marvel version of New York, it is debatably my favorite landmark of it all. And so I love Stark/Avengers Tower. And it was really fun to see here. I love seeing that. And then, of course, we'll see that idea, if you will, kind of evolve more later on. And so really good stuff. So much sauce there. Now, there's one thing that a lot of people will talk about and remember around this time, 2012, 2013. It is Phil Coulson and his death. He sacrifices himself to try and stop Loki, and it does not work, but eventually it is used as a segue to get the Avengers to put their differences aside and unite, and eventually take the battle to Loki, and they have the giant final battle of it all, and it is really great. And it's teed up really well, because not only do we see Coulson in the other films kind of doing things out and about throughout, but we also get to see Coulson later on in this film. We're given more reason to like him as a character, and it's really subtle. Like the Captain America trading cards and things like that, he just relates to the characters a lot more, and we just get to see a nicer, kind of, for lack of a better term, softer side of him. And so the fact that they kind of axe him and that Loki kills him, I think that really does a lot to help further the plot and really adds a lot of emotional stakes to it. Because then at the end of Act 2, when Loki escapes and Coulson dies, there's a lot of weight and gravitas to that, and it's because they teed up the character so well. And even though we barely even know the guy, he's shown up in like 3 movies, I think, before. His death was very impactful and eventful. And then, if you're like me and you decided to watch Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., you find out how he cheated death, which I'm not going to be rewatching, unfortunately, in K-Swope versus the MCU, in which, by the way, I'm reviewing every MCU film. And we're ending Phase 1 today, guys, which is pretty fun. So that's going to be a whole thing. But Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., I remember, you know, it was a very noble show, and I have a lot of fond memories of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Phil Coulson, so I just love Phil Coulson as a character generally. But I digress. We're getting off track. I also got to say, too, this was the first, maybe not the first time I'm exposed to the concept of the helicarrier, but the helicarrier is awesome in this. And the big helicarrier reveal that we see, too, where they're just, you know, on the thing in the middle of the ocean, and then turbines just start up, and suddenly they're taking off into the sky. That is really cool, and I just think the helicarrier as a concept is absolutely beautiful, and I love it so much, and it's just really cool. Again, this is all sizzle. This is not plot-based, so I like the helicarrier, but it's really neat, and it makes for an amazing second act action set piece, and I just love it. I also noticed, too, when watching this, the pacing of the film is very different from a lot of films I've seen. And I think it's partially because it's about 2 hours and 20 minutes. And with it being 2 hours and 20 minutes, the markers, if you will, of Act 1, Act 2, Act 3 are a little moved around. And so I feel like they've got a pretty long Act 1, a pretty short Act 2, and then another very long Act 3. But I still think it worked. It's also interesting, too, with how they go about introducing characters, because they introduce a lot of characters at the beginning, important characters. And then you got, like, Thor, who doesn't show up till, like, the end of Act 1. And it's very, very interesting. But I think it's also really, really fascinating, too, because it kind of keeps you hanging on, because you know that he's going to be in the movie. You know he's going to show up and be in, a good chunk of the movie at the very least. And so you just know it's going to happen, and then when it finally does, it's sort of like there's that anticipation where, like, the Avengers are going to assemble, you know who they are, you just got to wait for everybody to fall in line. And so when he finally does show up, it's almost like a sigh of relief, but also you've been waiting for it, so you kind of have that tension kind of burst there, and it's really, really fascinating. And so I just gotta say that the pacing in this is very different and unique. I quite appreciate it a lot. This film I also gotta talk about because I feel like the MCU humor really picks its pace up and kind of finds itself in this film a lot too. And I also really like the humor in this film because it doesn't go too far and too much like we see it nowadays. I think one of the biggest problems with the modern MCU humor as we kind of view it is that everyone's just cracking a joke every now and then, and no one's taking anything seriously. This film had a lot of very funny moments, but they were all used sparingly to the point where you weren't sure when someone was going to make a joke, and when they did, it landed even better because the timing was better. Nowadays, I feel like with most MCU films, people are expecting it to be half funny, and I don't like that at all, because no one expected that from this film. It just so happened to be funny at some moments, and that just made it even better. But at the end of the day, I mean, too much of a good thing is a problem, and this film was balanced really well with that. It's still very MCU humory, but I feel like it feels warranted where we see it, and so I got to give a lot of credit to that. Getting ready to wind things down, I got 2 more points of good things to say about the Avengers, but in general, I think this movie is the most important and impactful crossover in TV, movie, anything history, to be quite honest. Because I don't know if you're aware how much that this crossover affected and influenced every other crossover we have seen since, okay? Because you had these 4 different films, I guess 5 if you consider, there's 2 Iron Man films, right? But 3 different franchises all exist in the same world. We've had that before. We've had crossovers before, right? But nothing of this magnitude where we have these 4 AAA franchises in the same world that are all coming together in a big budget superhero team-up film of this magnitude. It was absolutely insane, and I remember being a kid. I actually did not see, I don't think, any MCU films before I saw The Avengers. I was kind of keeping up, like I knew what was coming out. I knew that Thor existed, I knew The Incredible Hulk, I knew Iron Man, I knew Captain America, all that stuff. But when I first saw the trailer for The Avengers as a child, I was mind blown, and I was like, this is the movie I need to see. Like, period. And so, it was amazing. It is a cinematic event. In fact, this is probably the biggest cinematic event possibly of my childhood, okay? I almost said Lifetime for a minute there, but I'm like, no, because we'll get to Endgame eventually. But of my childhood, at least, and it is just so good. And I have a lot of nostalgia for this film, I'm going to be quite honest. A lot of nostalgia. But if you even look to, like, the Arrowverse, or you look at even shows that aren't even superhero, like all those network cop drama shows, okay? These crossovers, I feel like, are very heavily influenced by what they did in the Avengers, because I don't think they would have done crossovers of this magnitude like we've seen them do in other TV stuff before if the Avengers did not already set this crossover thing as a really, really cool idea. So, I gotta give a lot of credit to that. I think that this film holds a very, very special place in pop culture history for the crossovers, and I feel like they kind of set a precedent, and I think even Marvel has gone way too far with this in recent days. But I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it was executed incredibly well in this film, and it made such an important cultural touchstone. So much credit goes to this film. It's just so much. But the last good thing I have to say, too, is I feel like this film was the first one where they get the end credit scenes right. And here's what I mean by that. Iron Man had a good one, right? They had the Avengers Initiative. Most of the other ones, they had either a scene from another movie that was about to come out, or in the case of like Captain America First Avenger, a scene with a sloppily made trailer tacked on the end of it, and I'm just kind of like, not a fan. But this one had 2 credit scenes, okay? The mid-credit scene, which revealed Thanos, which is very important because Thanos is going to be the big bad of the MCU straight up. And so that reveal was a very important, very impactful, and that just started the theorist wheels going. And we've seen so many theories and people like that on the internet all since this film. This film started all of that, okay, to be quite honest, and it's just absolutely insane. The second one is also a funny one because Tony Stark makes a joke about trying shawarma, and literally it's just like 30 seconds of the team being dead exhausted at a shawarma place that's like half destroyed because of, the whole battle that just took place. Just sitting there, eating, almost like they just played in some type of sporting tournament that took all day, and they're dead tired, and like they enjoy each other's company, but like no one's talking because they're just too tired to. It's that kind of feeling. And so I very much like that because I can relate to that in certain ways. And so it was really fun, really funny, and those end credit scenes are just chef's kiss. Mwah. Now, the bad things, okay? Unfortunately, I have some bad things to say about this. This is one of my favorite MCU films, just letting you know right here, right now. But Captain America's suit is not very good. I know that's a nitpick, but I think this is the worst Captain America suit that we see in the MCU. And that's a lot saying that we saw the comic accurate to a fault suit back in the first Avengers. But this suit feels like it's not quite there. I mean, it doesn't quite look serious enough. I think the coloring's a big problem, too. But I just think the design, it's just like, it's kind of hard for me to justify that design. Like, there's something missing. It looks a little too clean and a little too bright and flashy, and it's just, something just does not sit with me right with that suit in this film. So, not a fan of the Captain America suit. The biggest flaw of this film, though, in my opinion, is how the heck does Thor know what's going on? There's some things alluded to and mentioned, so for example, at the end of Thor, the Bifrost was destroyed, so they were working on rebuilding it over in Asgard, right? Okay. So Thor was kind of stuck up in Asgard for now, okay? Now, Loki does make a quip saying that Odin had to have summoned some form of black magic or dark magic, whatever, to bring him to Earth during this time, right? But then begs the question, why is he at Earth during this time? How does he know what Loki is up to? Was Heimdall involved with this in any way, shape, or form? I really don't know. They don't explain it. And so there are many ways you could probably theorize and figure it out, but they don't explain it at all. And I also want to point this out, too, because I was looking at some comments from some other shorts I've been posting and things like that about, the MCU and certain plots and things. I just got to point out, too, deleted scenes are not canon, okay? So just because something's in a deleted scene does not mean that it is canon to the film, and because it's a deleted scene, it also means that it is not in said film. Therefore, if there is a deleted scene that addresses that, they should not have deleted that information, because that information is valuable for us as viewers who not have this question, okay? And it still brings the film down. So I'm just saying that. I don't know if this film has that or not, but it's more of a gripe I just have with people I've interacted with online. So anyways, that I think is the biggest plot hole of this film. I think the film's pretty tight other than that, which is a shame because it is a near perfect movie in my mind, but it's things like that that just kind of keep it from being peak, if you will. Now, I have two notes. First one being that this film was like the last MCU film released before every single person on Earth had a smartphone. I think it's kind of funny, not going to lie, because you still see some dumb phones being used, and I quite appreciate it. It kind of takes me back to simpler time. But it is what it is. It gets a shown age. I mean, this movie is like, what? Almost like 15 years old at this point, come to think of it, which makes me feel really old, come to think of it also. Also got to point out the Mark Ruffalo in the room.
Yeah, Mark Ruffalo.
So in case you don't know, what happened after the movie The Incredible Hulk came out is, with the film and the reception and everything like that, they were not happy with everything. They thought Edward Norton had too much control, and he was really fighting with the studio a lot during that film, and especially afterwards. Too much to the point that he did not come back, and so they recast Edward Norton with Mark Ruffalo. So Mark Ruffalo is now the Hulk. They lost Edward Norton, and so they just kind of push it to the side, if you will. They don't say it doesn't exist or anything, but they kind of bring it up and reference it the least out of all of the MCU Phase 1 films. So it's interesting to bring up. I like Edward Norton too, as far as an actor, goes, but I think Mark Ruffalo brings a different kind of energy to this role, and it's one that I honestly prefer. Now, all this being said, we need to land this plane, preferably not in the ice, but what's going to happen is I'm going to give this film a rating, and guys, I've talked this film up so much. I love this movie. This film means so much to me, and it's one of the most impactful films that I can think of for my own personal life and my own personal taste preferences, and really, this film, to be totally honest, is what really ignited my current passion and interest in superhero media and content. And that being said, I would not be sitting here today reviewing this film if it weren't for this film, obviously. But I wouldn't even started this channel probably if this film was not part of my life and my childhood growing up. So I'm very nostalgic for it. I think it is great. Is it perfect? No, but I think it's pretty dang close. And that, ladies and gentlemen, leaves me to give Avengers a 9 out of 10. And that is my review, and that ends Phase 1 of K-Swap versus the MCU. Thank you guys all for joining. We'll be starting Phase 2 very, very soon, kicking off with Iron Man 3. And so I'm really excited to revisit that one. It's one of my favorites, not going to lie, a bit of a spoiler. But that's going to wrap things up for me. I, of course, am K-Swope. Don't forget that Jesus loves you, and I will see you in the next one.